Hi, welcome everyone. We are going to get started here in just a minute or two. We'll wait for a few people to log in. We know how tech issues can be bothersome at times, so we'll give people a couple extra minutes. So hold tight. That was the perfect countdown music. Awesome. So welcome everyone. It's good to see your names. I don't see your faces, but we see your names here. So thank you for participating in today's webinar, and it's how to hold an engaging virtual training. So we all know that most of our work is being done virtually, and what are some tips and best practices to ramp up our game in that space. So we have a very informative webinar scheduled today. I'm Linnell Smith. I am a program manager with Oweesta Corporation, and I'll be your facilitator today. So I may not be the expert, but we definitely have an awesome panel of experts that will share their knowledge. And just some basic webinar courtesies and reminders. We encourage you guys to stay present and engaged. We have you muted, but you do have access to the chat function. And I dropped a couple of little notes in the chat box, so you'll see that at the bottom of your screen. You also have the ability to raise your hand as well. So we will have some time for Q&A at the end, but also if you do have a burning question, make sure and just drop it into the chat and we'll pause that moment to bring it up to our panelists, okay? So I want to briefly introduce the panelists. We have some amazing folks here who are doing great things in the virtual space, in trainings and webinars, Zoom meetings as well. We have Russell Siegel from Sequoia Fund. He is the executive director. Crystal Cedino from Native Learning Center, and Stephanie Cote with Oweesta Corporation. So I'll just hand it over to Russ and do a quick intro.
Yeah, hey everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm the executive director of the Sequoia Fund. We serve the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in a relatively small corner of Western North Carolina, but we do primarily commercial lending. We do training, we do a lot of consulting and hand holding these days, like I'm sure a lot of you are doing. And we've got some new programs coming out. So 2021 is going to be a pretty exciting year for us. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Russ. And Crystal.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me today. This was really exciting to be part of, especially considering everything has turned virtual, especially in my world. I am the training and development specialist for the Native Learning Center. I've been with them for 5 years now. January 31st will be my 5th year, so it's been quite an adventure. I love it. I love what I do. We basically provide training and technical assistance to Native Americans and anyone who works within Indian country. So truly blessed. I'm blessed to still be working through the pandemic, and we have tons of things coming up this fiscal year. So if you're not on our mailing list, definitely be sure to get on there because you'll get notifications on all the trainings that we have coming up.
Thank you, Crystal. And Stephanie.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Cote. I'm a programs officer here at Oweesta Corporation. And just excited to have this webinar to share some of our tips and tricks. I am also with our Financial Education and Asset Building Department. So next week we have a training coming up in partnership with Native Learning Center. And just a quick plug, keep an eye out for all of our upcoming trainings. We've got another one in April with Native Learning Center, our regular Building Native Communities Financial Skills for Families training. And then in May, we have our coaching training. So yeah, just excited to share our tips and tricks of the virtual space. Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. And you will definitely hear more from the panelists as we go through the webinar. I also, if we can go back into the next slide, Steph. I just want to do a quick check and see who is all out there. And we love this little tool called Menti. And so I will drop the link in the chat so you can click on it there. It'll open up a new browser for you and you can actually just enter where you're viewing from today. And you can also do this on your phone. Go to menti.com and you can still type in the code that's listed on the slide in front of you. And I will eventually here share my screen so we can see where everyone is logging in from today. Thank you, Steph. Awesome. And so you'll see who's representing from where. We've got some Oklahoma folks, Hawaii folks, my lovely Pueblo folks. Chinle has got to be Navajo. I have to shout out to Navajo. And then we have some people that dropped in the chat. Lots of folks from the Nehland. So wonderful. So this is just a cool little tool to that you can incorporate since we're talking about the virtual space, just to make it a little fun and kind of see who's all logging in from where. So you can add to that. So welcome everybody. We have really good representation from all over Indian country, and that's always really beautiful to see. So we'll jump back into our slides. So what we want to focus on today is really talking about most of us as practitioners, educators, even housing counselors, financial coaches. We've been doing a lot of our work in the one-on-one in-person space. And once COVID hit last year, it forced us into adjusting into a virtual space. And many of us are doing that right now. Some may be looking at ways to incorporate or ramp up their virtual game. So we're trying to create this webinar to help you in that space. It doesn't have to be daunting. It doesn't have to be scary. So we have the experts that are going to share how they're doing this. And it looks like I'm having a little bit of audio problems, but I'll resolve this by switching over here in just a minute to, I might have to log in. So don't you just love tech issues? And I checked all of this just before we got started. So Steph, can you just review the next slide for me? I'd really appreciate it while I log in.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a poll we're going to launch real quick. So you'll notice there should be a poll that pops up. Let me find where this poll is. There we go. And it should pop right up. Are you currently conducting a virtual trainings? Yes, no, not yet. And if the poll doesn't pop up, because sometimes there's always like 1% where it doesn't pop up for, feel free to type it in that chat. But it looks like we've got 94% of the people responding. This has got to be like the most involved poll I've ever seen. 97%. Awesome. Yay for Zoom working. So I'm going to end this poll and share the results. We've got 18 people are doing trainings and 13 or 39% not yet. So this is where your virtual space is going to shine. And we'll check back in and see if Linnell's audio is back. Oh, Linnell, we can see the video on your phone though, just FYI. Oh, but I did stop it. There we go. Okay.
Can you hear me now, Steph?
Yep,
Is it clear enough?
crystal clear. Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, sorry about that, guys. This is like the best thing to happen during a virtual training. Okay, awesome. So it looks like many of you are currently conducting virtual training. So that's great because you are some of the experts in this session as well. And for those of you that have not, this is going to be really informative for you to give you some guidance and best practices because unfortunately, I showed you one of the things that can happen is that audio technical issues can be something that arises at the most inopportune times, but how do you adjust to it? What's your plan B? And then many of you are just like maybe not ready to get into that space just yet, or you haven't necessarily found the need to do that. So thank you for sharing in the poll. I hope my audio is much better. Okay, so just a few best practices and then we'll hear from our panelists. But one of the things that's really important is to invest in reliable virtual technology. I have to kind of chuckle at this because it's something that just happened. So determine your virtual needs, and this is going to be really important for you to assess what you may need in the virtual space. So thinking about what kind of information are you going to be sharing? That can be from the type of platform that you're going to be teaching from, what virtual platform, and I know our panelists will go through some of the different ones that are available to you. So really determining your virtual needs. The headsets, I used AirPods for my audio and for my mic. I do have issues with my computer, which is what's troublesome about the sound. So really troubleshooting using your platform and finding out what's going to work and what doesn't. And is there a workaround, maybe a mic, or for me, I opt in to use my phone as an alternative. So you'll see I have it tied in with the panelists here. And then make use of trial subscriptions. So if you're testing out different platforms, they generally have a free period where you can try out things. And this is something that we've done just to test, is this going to work in the virtual class that I'll be teaching? Or is this a little too cumbersome? Is it too expensive to actually incorporate it into our budget? And then invest in a hands-free set. Especially if you're a trainer or a facilitator, or if you're anything like me, I like to use my hands when I talk. And so I like to have my hands free and available to demonstrate or show, and even just be a little more animated. So hands-free set is really helpful when you're facilitating and training. And then invest in a quality camera. A lot of times the cameras that are set in our systems or our laptops may not be the best of quality. So you want to invest in a higher quality camera. My current system did not have a built-in camera, so we bought one. And it was really great to see that it lines up with a document that Russ is going to share with us. I have the exact same brand. So it really does make a difference to have good quality, especially if you're going to be facilitating and teaching for a period of time. You want to make sure that you're actually viewable to the participants. And also investing in a ring light. Sometimes we have the back silhouettes, the backlighting is not just not great, or we have the light coming in from above. So it's good to have the ring light to where it highlights you a lot better and people can see you. Okay, next slide. And then just some best practices for virtual trainers. So the first slide was really focusing on the trainings as a whole, but also for your virtual trainers, we may not be comfortable. Some of us may not feel totally confident in our virtual training. We might rock it in the in-person, but switching to that virtual space does take a little more. And so this could be your growth edge if you feel like you're not feeling strongly about your skill sets in the virtual space, push through it. And this is where we're going to grow. The uncomfortable places where we have the most growth. And so you as a trainer will want to create an energetic environment. Remember how you come through on camera really reflects to the individuals on the other end. So if you come in with low energy, just as you would in an in-person training, you want to bring in that energy, have the build up to the training. And there's different ways that you can actually create the hype and the energy around it. You can look at energizers and icebreakers to start things off, some fun, engaging activities. And then just your tone and your presence is really important in that virtual space. So you want to come in to create that energy, whatever energy you want. If you want that good, strong, fun, vibrant energy, you have to bring that as well. And it's always helpful to have a co-trainer. If you've been in any of our virtual Building Native Communities trainings, Steph and I are generally co-trainers for those sessions. And it really helps to, in the virtual space, because Stephanie's forte is really in the tech space. And so when I can come in and do content, she can always troubleshoot the tech. As you can see, when we first started the webinar, she definitely took over for me. So having a co-trainer helps in that way. Plus it gives you a break too, so that you're not constantly talking for 2-3 hours straight. And then it gives a change for the participants to hear, just to have another face, another voice in changing the content. And then build engagement with and interest with activities. So we're huge on making our trainings very interactive and fun in-person trainings. So you want to do that in the virtual space as well. We've all experienced trainings, virtual meetings that were not engaging and boring. And this is when you lose participants. They start doing other things. They start looking at their phones or checking social media, or let me respond to that email. So if you're constantly putting activities and ways of them to engage via polls, maybe like a fun Mentimeter that we shared earlier, things like that, or even just giving them moments to look away from the screen, stretch, get some body movement. So building in those activities and things that you would have done in person, just do some brainstorming. How can I modify this for the virtual space? And I believe Steph mentioned earlier, and we'll share this at the end of the webinar, we also have part 2, which really is going to talk about the ways you can facilitate these activities and what platforms can you use and how do you use it? How do I incorporate into my virtual training? So that'll be in February. And also you want to be the content expert. You want to know your material, you want to know your PowerPoint, you want to plan out the activities that you're going to have in your training. What's really helpful for all trainers, whether you're doing this in person or virtually, is to have an annotated agenda. And really detail out what you have scheduled for that webinar and for that training, that Zoom meeting, to timeframes, because that'll be helpful for you as time management when you go into the training. You know, you have 5 minutes for this subject matter, and I have 10 minutes for an activity, and so on and so forth. So that's going to be one of your best friends and that you're going to go to. And then also be the platform expert. If you're going to be doing a lot of Zoom trainings, know Zoom as best you can. If you're using WebEx, know the system well so that you can navigate seamlessly between activities, content, slides, monitoring the chat. And so that may sound like a lot for one person to do. And if you're doing a big training or a webinar, sometimes that is very difficult. So that's where we go back to it's really helpful to have a co-trainer or somebody that can run the tech in the background. And then creating a comfortable environment for not only you as a trainer, but also for your participants. Remember, you're creating that energetic environment. You yourself have to be comfortable. So plan your space accordingly. Even having a comfortable work chair that you're going to be working from, and then your headsets, make sure that that's comfortable. Have your water. So a lot of self-care as you're going to be doing the training, and take breaks so that way you as a trainer can actually take a pause, refresh, and then come back with that same energy or even a higher energy. And then prepare for tech issues. So unfortunately, that just happens. So give yourself the space and grace to let that happen. And that goes back to where we actually have a plan B. Okay, what if my internet goes down? What do I do then? Okay, and this has actually happened to many of us in this space. And we know we have a hotspot. So we're able to go run and set that up. If your phone is not working, what do I do then? If my headset goes out, my battery's dead, and so I switch to my phone. So you always have a plan B, troubleshoot all the potential things that can happen during your virtual training, and think about how you would resolve that in the moment. So just some helpful things for you as trainers as you're going into this space. Next slide, Steph. And then engaging participants. So this is really important because when we're in the virtual space, it's easy to do other things when we have so much going on around us. So ways to keep your participants engaged in the content that you're covering. So ask interesting and thought-provoking questions. This really gets them to where it might take a pause for them and be like, okay. And then you can also encourage collaborative learning, put them into groups, pair them up, do dyads, triads, have them do these small conversations. That's always helpful in virtual learning. Breaks and energizers, like we said, it can get tiresome. Wouldn't go longer than an hour without a break for individuals. It's helpful for them to just take maybe even 5 minutes, a bio break, or just a stretch break, an energizer. And then change up the delivery of the content. This is really important. If you've been to the Building Native Communities trainings before, we do an assessment of how we learn. So we talk about learning styles. Some people are tactile, some people are auditory, some people are visual. So same thing is going to be in your virtual space. So really create activities and ways to deliver content that will hit each of those different learning styles. That'll help with engagement. And then offer incentives. So if you're able to, maybe even gift cards to hand out, or sending out gift cards for food so you can have a meal together, things like that. And it may not even be a monetary type of incentive, but it could be bring your favorite snack and share it during our virtual networking activity. And then pre-event polling is helpful. This is where you can kind of create the hype and the energy around it, is to send out information that you're curious about the individuals. What would be helpful in creating that energetic and comfortable environment for your participants. So I like to know the individuals, so that get to know you introduction is really important in the virtual space, even more so than when I'm in person, because now you can't necessarily have those little side conversations, water cooler conversations, or sit together at lunch. So having pre-polling events for just curiosity kind of questions is helpful, and it creates a more personal relationship before you actually go into the training. And then the other one is start your training on time. So I know we wait a little bit for people. We don't want to wait too long, because the ones that logged in early or on time, we want to honor and respect that. So just knowing that you're going to start your trainings on time is really important for the participants and them logging in. Okay, so go ahead and go to the next slide, Steph. So now I'm going to pause here, and I just want to see if there's anything, Steph, that you notice that needs to jump out and be answered by anybody in the chat.
There was just one question. As a facilitator, how do you maintain high positive energy when talking to a bunch of blacked out screens and or zero participation? So I think this is, you had mentioned, Linnell, while you were talking, coming in with high energy. So that's question
And
popped up right
and,
after.
and I would, and this is a perfect question, I think, that I'd love to pose to the panelists. And actually, we'll just start there. So we have our wonderful panelists that are going to share their knowledge and expertise in the virtual space. And so I'd like to pose it to any one of you. So how do you maintain high positive energy as you're basically talking to blank screens? That's only in a webinar.
You know, I would just say, bring your own energy. One of the things I encourage people to do is rehearse, so that you know what you're doing and it doesn't matter who's on the other side of the screen. Think about if you've ever been to a music venue where you've heard a band and maybe the crowd was really small. Did they sing lackluster? Did they say, well, we're not really going to play our best music because there's not enough people here? And okay, now, no, you know, a good band is going to put on a good show. And if you think of it that way, it's going to bring your energy up, and it is going to bring some more engagement. So act like people on the other side are just watching you with rapt attention, even though their cameras are off and they can't wait to hear what you got to say.
Wonderful words of advice. Thank you, Russ.
I'd like to add just caffeine. No, I'm kidding. I mean, caffeine definitely does help, especially for those low energy days where, you know, we're all human, you know, even though we're trainers and whatnot, there's always going to be a day where you're just like, not 100% there. So caffeine does help, but so does, honestly, just a positive attitude towards it, because, you know, I think entering the whole virtual world now, I'm really like immersed within it. I think a lot of the time I've experienced that whole like blackout screen, and one of the platforms that we use, Adobe Connect, actually I can't see any of the participants at all, so all I see are names. So just having a positive attitude, knowing that you're there to kind of do what it is that you do, and yeah, and that's really, like, for me, that's how I kind of look at it. And I'm already a high energy person, so caffeine just like adds another level of energy, if you will. And yeah, other than that, I do want to mention that I tend to call out participant names. So I know not everyone likes being called out, but it's a good way to kind of like get everyone involved and whatnot. So yeah.
Wonderful. And thank you, Crystal.
Piggybacking off of, they said, Russ and Crystal both offered like amazing suggestions. I thrive in webinar platforms, so I don't like seeing people. So maybe just some people like to see faces. I also teach a Girl Scout troop for ages. We have 7-year-olds to 13-year-olds, and let me tell you, those 13-year-olds do not want to be on camera. So the way that I engage them in my my things are, one, to call them out, because then they have to take off their mute and go on screen. Another way is to do breakout rooms. So I found even the shyest of people who don't want to be on camera, you will go on camera when they're one-on-one in a breakout room with someone. So, so those are just some tips and tricks that you can do to unveil the shyness of people.
Definitely. And Allison appreciated the feedback, so thank you all. So we'll jump into a couple of questions for y'all. So I'm curious, what platforms have you all tapped into, and do you have any recommendations for anyone in particular? And I'll start with Crystal.
Awesome. So I think it goes back to what you mentioned earlier. It really does depend on what your needs are and how, robust or whatnot the program that you need needs to be. So for example, at the Native Learning Center, we use Adobe Connect, and that's a pretty big program. And we use it specifically for our webinars. So a lot of the time, or one of the really neat things that you can do with the program is you host the live session, and then, sorry about that, you host the live session, and you're able to post the recording, and you have your own, web page for all of those webinars, whether it's live or recorded. Not everyone needs that though. So I think all of that really, really does depend on what it is that you're looking for, which is great that you mentioned that earlier, Linnell. Other than that, if I'm doing something basic, then I'm gonna resort to WebEx. That's what we use over at the tribe. We're not allowed to actually use Zoom, so I'm using this on a personal laptop. But yeah, the tribe doesn't allow us to use Zoom, so therefore they've set up a different system, WebEx, which is kind of similar to Zoom. And I remember when we first started at the very beginning of the pandemic, there were certain features where I was like, oh, I see some similarities here and I see some similarities there. I'm like, but it's not quite like Zoom. But either way, they've come a long way since, we've really been deep into this whole virtual sort of like reality of things and whatnot. So my two recommendations are going to be Adobe Connect and WebEx. And yeah.
Thank you. And do you have like a general ballpark of how much? Of how much that costs, like if you can provide a general price range?
So unfortunately, IT doesn't have that information like available to us because it's all set up through our IT department. I do know that with Adobe Connect, because that's set up through us specifically, you can actually pay for that on a month-to-month basis if you want, or you can pay for it annually. Our platform specifically, we contract through someone else who is a service provider, if you will, for it. And I know this number is going to sound crazy. We do pay about $5,000 for it annually. And I know that seems like a lot of money, but like I said, we do a lot of things with it. There's multiple hosts. It really depends on how robust you need it to be. However, yeah, you can do it on a month-to-month basis, and I've seen costs way less than what we pay annually for it. So,
yeah. And Stephanie actually dropped some price plans for both of those platforms, and so this may be part of that finding out what is your need. NLC does do national training, so they have a wider audience. They have a deeper reach. You may be doing trainings that may have 4 participants in the class. I've done trainings where I had 1 back on my res, and so it's really going to determine what the need is, and then also what your budget will allow. But I'm curious to hear from you, Russ, as well regarding the platforms.
So I've used them all. I've literally used every online platform except Blue Jean. So if anybody's used Blue Jean and you want to weigh in, I would love to hear about Blue Jean. But I'm a Zoom junkie. I've used Zoom since it was a toddler in this space. And I just think it works really well. It also works well for us as an organization, not just the online training portion of it, but we use it for our staff meetings. We use it for our board meetings. And I did see a question that, why is Zoom not allowed? And I'm going to assume that it's because of security concerns. Zoom did drop the ball earlier this year on security, and there's no doubt about it. But they picked up the ball and ran it in for a touchdown, as far as I'm concerned. They went from this many users every day, and then when the pandemic hit, they just, their users exploded. And like anything else, they just weren't ready for it, and so they ramped up. And I think they're doing a better job. But it really does come down to what best fits your organization. Like Crystal said, we use it for a lot of different things. The tribe uses Teams, and we've done some training on Teams for tribal organizations. But if it's up to us, we're going to use Zoom. It's just super easy. We tried WebEx, and for us, it didn't offer as many features, and so we backed away from that. We also had some stability issues with it in terms of sharing lots of content. But yeah, Zoom is our thing. But I want to throw this out. If you just need to get some quick content out, don't discount live streaming. Don't discount Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Instagram Stories, Instagram Live. Those kinds of things are really great. If you just need to kick out some really quick content, maybe you've got a program that's starting, or maybe you've got something coming up, you can do training. In fact, I did a 30-minute training this morning over Facebook Live. And yeah, you don't do as many slides and you don't have handouts and things like that. But for really quick hit stuff, people tend to respond to the live streaming pretty well.
Great, thank you, Russ. And I'd also like to pose this question to you, Russ. So what equipment would you recommend? One is the platform, but also thinking about audio and mics, things like that.
Well, I want to reiterate what you had to say in your opening slides. Content is king. I'm a tech junkie, and so I start to think about all the tech stuff. But if you focus more on preparing good content and engaging content, the tech really isn't as important. You can have all the flashiest tech, but if you've got a boring presentation, you're going to lose people. So focus on that. One of the things that I recommend is a good camera. One of the things that I recommend in the handout that you're going to get is a Logitech C920. They're a little bit older, but they're proven. They're tough to get a hold of these days, as is a lot of presentation tech. The Logitech Brio does a great job with high definition, and both of those have built-in microphones. I'm using a shotgun boom microphone and a Canon Vixia HFR 500, blah, blah, blah. That's just my preference. You can use a decent camera with a microphone on it for less than $250, and you're going to get great results. People will give you some slack if your video isn't great, but they won't cut you any slack at all if your audio is bad. Sorry, Linnell, I know you got whipped on that in the early going here, but think about this. You're fixed in one spot when you're doing the training, but your audience is not. They may be in the car taking their kids to school. They may be at work trying to do 7 other things at one time. They may be on their mobile device, and they're going to be listening more than they're watching. And so it's okay that their screen is blacked out if they're engaged, but you've got to have great audio. And that's what I would focus on.
Wonderful tips. And actually, Russ, I planned that. So I was just making a point there. But definitely you want your clients to hear you clearly. Staff, I'm curious what your thoughts are on mics and video.
Yes. Well, I do not have the best right now, as you can probably hear, as Alyssa mentioned. Russ's audio is definitely standing out more than all of ours. So anything Russ shares in his handout, I would take that into heavy consideration. And like he said, the video is not 100% needed. I mean, the audio is really what you want and your content. So, and for instance, when you're presenting slides, your video is going to be a little teeny box in the corner that does not need high definition. So it depends on what you're going to be presenting. If you're going to be a talking head for 8 hours a day, then yeah, maybe invest in a better camera. But but also keep in mind 8 hours sitting in front of a screen is a lot. So yeah, I would recommend investing in really good audio. Sometimes Russ is probably cringing, but the MPOW headphones, they've worked really well and get really good audio. It was $20 on Amazon, and this was a few years ago. And I've used a few different MPOW. It's just MW or POW. They're like the cheapest that you can get, but they've worked really well. It zeroes out sound around you. So if you've got kids running around screaming, and you can put these on and focus on your work, and the audio that picks up through the Bluetooth is actually quite good, surprisingly. So that's what I recommend, but I'm sure there are like hundreds, if not thousands, out there that you can choose from. So.
Definitely. And Crystal, I'd like to hear you share as well.
All right. Well, so mine's more of on the expensive end. I'd say as far as AirBuds or earbuds go and whatnot, I know Linnell's using a pair of them. And we had some issues earlier, but I do stand by mine. I've never really had any issues with them. And I don't know, I'm a Mac, but I am a Mac person. So like Mac is like my everything. Is pretty much Mac, and I know that can definitely be on the more expensive end. I don't think it's needed though. Like you don't have to have, a Mac computer or a Mac laptop or, earbuds, like Apple earbuds, in order to do any of what we're, talking about. I've had friends that have purchased, earbuds off of Amazon and they love them. They work just as, well. Maybe they're not exactly, the technology that Apple utilizes, but you don't have to, I don't think you have to break the bank in order to get, really good or, honestly, like even just, I don't want to make it sound, mediocre, but decent sound and whatnot. Because for our webinars, we just use our Dell laptops. And I know that sometimes, audio can cut in and out. Sometimes though, that does have to do with, internet bandwidth and whatnot too. So you always want to make sure that you have a really good internet connection when you're doing all of these things and whatnot, because with horrible internet connection, it might all come out incredibly choppy, your videos coming in all scribbly and pixelated and whatnot. So my most, like every time we usually have issues with, connection or anything like that, a lot of the time I tend to look at within Adobe Connect, there are service bars in the upper right hand corner. And so it'll allow you to see what your service is like. So my thing is definitely making sure your internet's good. And then, like I said, you don't have to break the bank in order to get really good sound or, even just like a decent, sound. But I have been known to use Audio Technica microphones. Those are really great. We host a podcast as well at the Native Learning Center, and those are the microphones that we use. And I also have a podcast of my own, so I use that microphone as well. And I bought that off of Amazon for I think like $100. It wasn't all that expensive, so definitely recommend doing that and looking into that. And I think that's all I got. I hope that was helpful.
Definitely.
I'll give an amen to that. Do you use the Audio Technica ATR 2100 or something like that, Crystal? Yeah, perfect mic, less than $100. And you can look for these. You can look for the shotgun mics that are $4,000, y'all. I mean, this one's less than $20. get a lav mic that attaches to your collar, less than $20, and you get great sound, especially if you're moving around. But yeah, right on target.
So we got the thumbs up from Russ, definitely on some of those products. But we also, they shared several products that are from very affordable and you can break the bank kind of items. So it just depends on what your budget allows and then what your needs are in that space. But I also want to go back to talking about how we moved from the virtual space or from the in-person space with content, because remember, we want to have really good content. And when we're doing in-person, we have a different level of engagement with the individuals, but going into the virtual space, there had to be that shift. So I'm curious, what were some of the challenges and how did you overcome shifting from in-person to primarily virtual? And I'll start with Russ.
You know, for us, we live in Western North Carolina and we don't get great internet service in a lot of areas here. So the challenge wasn't really for us. It's for the people in our community. Can they get decent internet? And I think to a large degree, the school system, especially Cherokee Central Schools, really stepped up and said, if our kids are going to have to learn from home and we're going to have better internet, we're going to have to figure this out. And so the communities have really put a lot of effort into expanding broadband coverage. It's still not where it needs to be by any stretch, but you know, we're trying to use a lot of methods that don't involve bandwidth. You know, we want to send easy stuff into the homes. For us, though, it wasn't as much of a challenge as a blessing. You know, we could run live training, and we'd run a lunch and learn on a Wednesday. We'd buy everybody lunch to get them to show up. We might have 3 or 4 people show up. Now we do the same exact content, but we do it in an hour and 15-minute webinar Wednesday. People can sit down at their own desk or wherever they are with lunch, absorb great content, and it's cheaper, it's faster. If they miss it today, they can catch the replay. So it's a little of both. I think for our community, they would like to see a little more robust internet, but for us, it's been pretty good.
Thank you. And I'm glad you brought up the rural nature of limited internet access. I think many of our tribal communities are dealing with that now, having to do remote learning and then working from home. The bandwidth has been stretched to its capacity. I know on my res, that's been the instance. We can't get internet for my parents because there's such a backlog. There's not enough availability out there. But I'm curious to hear from staff on what were the biggest challenges going from in-person to virtual trainings.
Yeah, thank you, Linnell. Yeah, going from virtual to from in-person to virtual, the biggest challenge was engagement. And Linnell can also attest to this. So trying to keep participants actively engaged, especially when you go from a 3-day training, trying to space it out to accommodate individuals' times now. So like, and our time in front of a computer. So we went from a 3-day training and broke it out into a 5-day training, which might seem like a lot more, but we took less hours each day just to make sure that we break it up. And inserting those energizers throughout the day is key. So getting people out of their chairs, getting breaks, having them come back. I will recopy it and put it in, but I'd like to make a plug for our upcoming webinar. It's going to be completely all engagement. So we're going to have it through Zoom meetings, but it's all of, not all, most of our most exciting energizers and icebreakers and games to teach you how to do it. And you can also, you know, all of our participants will be participating in all of the games. So that was the hardest part, was trying to take our games and content and really plug it into something engaging. And you'll see that in the next webinar, how you can do that. So like doing online Jeopardy games, doing quizzes, different types of quiz maker using Menti. So all of these different platforms to really really adapt to all three types of learning, as well as taking those three types of learning and plugging it into the online universe.
Thank you, Steph. And yes, that has been, I have to ditto everything you said. Of switching from in-person to a virtual space is definitely a little bit challenging. And I just wanted to acknowledge a comment that Alyssa dropped in the chat. You can tell the difference with your audio versus the other panelists. So I'm positive she's referring to Russ's audio. So definitely the investment in quality equipment is highlighted there, because you do want to come across in a professional way as well, especially if you're going to be doing many trainings, long-term trainings. You want the people to be able to hear you and hopefully see you as well. So I wanted to pose one more question to you as we're coming to a close here, and I don't have any other questions in the chat box right now, and I'll start with you, Crystal. What would be your tips to our virtual participants out there that are going into the training space? What would be your best secret that you want to share with them?
Okay, so I have a few.
Awesome.
We have about maybe 4 or 5. So one's definitely going to be patient and do not freak out. Technology is going to fail you. It is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. And so don't have a panic attack, or just don't freak out. Technology does its thing. 1 minute it'll be working, the next minute it'll be cutting out, and it's, you know, it's got a mind of its own. So just don't freak out, kind of like take a deep breath and just try and like work through the problem. My other suggestion is always going to be test runs are your best friend. So before a webinar starts or virtual training or whatever it may be, make sure you do a test run so that, you know, you work out any, you know, maybe somebody needs to download a program that they didn't realize they needed to have. Maybe they need a different internet web browser. Maybe they need, it could be an array of things. But when you do these test runs, either an hour or 30 minutes before, you give yourself that chance to figure out all of those, you know, I guess you could say kinks, you know, that could possibly, you know, come up. And then what else was I gonna mention? No button smashing. I know that a lot of the time when it's sort of reverting back to be patient, don't freak out. I know a lot of the time when things start to pop up and it's not happening the way that you had practiced or anything like that, you start to click through things and button smash on the laptop or computer or whatnot. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just, again, take a deep breath, read what's popping up on the screen, because it could actually be an important, you know, notification. And every time you go to redo that action that you want to go do, the same notification pops up. So just breathe, take a moment, read what's happening on the screen, and then proceed forward. That's what I got.
Great advice, Crystal. Thank you so much. And Russ, share your best tips.
I could just say ditto and be done. I don't want to cover any of that ground. I will say that your energy level is different. You know, when you go back to how big you are on the screen, when you're in front of a group and you're using, and this is one of the reasons I use the mic that I do, is because I'm about 4 feet away from my camera and I can be animated and I can use I talk with my hands anyway. And it really just helps kind of bring a different energy to the room. But I would just say, keep in mind the hierarchy of importance when you're doing virtual presentations. Number one, content. You've got to have good content. You've got to be the content expert. You've got to rehearse that content, because it may just be you and your voice. If tech goes down and you're losing your slides and you don't have your notes, people on the other side don't care. They're there for the hour. They want the content. Give them the content and have it down cold. Next is going to be your audio. You do want to say, I mean, I have a face made for radio and a voice made for Braille. So have the best audio that you can to make sure people hear you clearly. And then you can worry about your video, but don't let the tech overwhelm you. The last thing I'm going to say is I did see a comment in the chat about how do you, even adults are not comfortable being on camera. Everybody's got a camera. Get your kids to get you on TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and make some videos. Make a 30-second video, a 1-minute video. These things go away after 24 hours or so. So they're not going to be out there forever. Make a video, get used to making videos, get used to talking to that little camera so that when you're looking at your computer, you're not looking at something else. You're looking at the camera. And that just takes practice. But I think if you just get used to making videos for fun, where you're not going to be judged and you're just having a good time, it's going to be so much easier to have a different presence when you get on camera for some training.
I love that, Russ. I love that. So challenging you all to, if you're not in the TikTok space, on social media, making videos, try it out and share with Russ. share your videos. So I love that. And lastly, Stephanie, what are your best tips and tricks you want to share?
I could say ditto and end it as well. Crystal covered pretty much anything I would say. The only thing I would say is just get really comfortable with whatever platforms that you're using. So I have the benefit of having a Girl Scout meeting every 2 weeks to practice everything that I'm going to do on them before it hits Indian country. So gather those nieces and nephews and try it on out before you go live, and and have fun with it. Just remember to breathe, like Crystal said, and focus on your content.
Thank you, Stephanie. Really good tips and tricks and advice, from technology to even how you show up. So I just wanted to address one of the earlier comments on how you bring that positive energy, because I feel like this is a part of it, and this is me sharing my tip with you, is really create a way that grounds you first before you step into that virtual space. So really having whatever grounding practice is good for you. Some people might take a quick walk or just be outside and get a breath of fresh air. I like to burn cedar before I do big things like that. So that's my way of grounding. So really creating that calmness within yourself. It's okay to feel anxious and nervous to go into any kind of training, whether it's in person or virtual, but just kind of channeling that and let it tell you what it wants to tell you. It's like, oh, it's telling me to be on my game, is what I've learned with my nervous energy. It's telling me to be my best in this space. And so just channel it, ground it, let it go, and you come in with the best energy that you're able to muster up that day. And just know that it's for the benefit for the people on the other side. So you want to deliver your best for them so that they can go out and deliver into their tribal communities, because that's what we all do. We're so passionate about it. And so tap into that passion as well. So we are just about at time, and I don't believe I see any additional questions in the chat box. So I want to definitely extend the deepest gratitude and thanks to our panelists, Crystal, Russ, and Stephanie. You guys made this work. It's amazing. And I hope, and no, I don't hope, I know that this information was shared with the right people in the webinar. So take this information. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is there. If you haven't gone to our website, the address is there as well. Sign up for our newsletter so you get all the updates on upcoming trainings, webinars. And if you want to reach out to any of our panelists, I'm sure they're willing to chat with you as well. So you can contact me for their email addresses and contact information. So we definitely look forward to seeing you at the next webinar, and keep an eye out for the email that's going to share the resources. So we'll definitely have Russ's infographic that he shared with us be a quick tool for you to view and recap some of his offerings. So I want to thank you all, and you have an amazing rest of your day.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Thank you all. That was so good. So we'll see you
Enjoy.
follow up with anything else.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation.
Yes, thank you so much, Linnell.
Crystal, great to see you.
You as well, Russ.
Linnell, I'll be in touch. We got stuff to talk about.
Yes, we do.
Bye-bye.